We might start actually with what happened elsewhere on Saturday night, which is Healy Park in Omagh. First of all, the fact that this game went ahead was kind of hilarious in itself, and then second of all, less hilarious was this brawl at half-time. What did you make of that? This was, it's like, we often throw the word brawl around too easily. I think it matches something like the 96 brawl that was in the replay in the final. This was on that level in terms of punches being thrown.
Yeah, I haven't seen great footage of it. There's been obviously the one where you can see the camera angle going in. There's a couple of videos going around of obviously a supporter, this one obviously having the bird's eye view on it. The problem seems to be that there's a load of supporters that can go through that gate, right, or that tunnel. There's obviously loads of backroom team. There's the two teams. So there's lots of different stuff going on. There's lots of different bodies in there. I don't think anyone's really easily identifiable. Something was said going through, obviously, and a reaction has happened. There seems to be a kind of a line of Dublin fellas, and then just this, this like horde of Tyrone fellas coming at them. Look, I don't know. I like there was a lot of stuff going. There was a lot of stuff being thrown. All right, I don't know how much of it was necessarily landing. But no, it's not good to see. But there is an issue with those kind of, when you're coming into the same tunnel. You know, that there was like, I mean, a lot of places you obviously have to go through that way, but there are some venues where there's actually opposite ends and you can go in a separate end. You know, you don't have to go through that main tunnel. You can be separated going through. Some teams will obviously stay in the pitch now, so they'll regather on the pitch, you know, so all the 15 will come in and then they'll all go in as a unit rather than having fellas going in and mixing as you go in. Whether you do that just to kind of calm down or gather your thoughts after the first half of a game or whatever it is, or to avoid that conflict. But yeah, it's silly stuff. You don't want to see it, but I suppose it's what Dublin would have expected really going up there. Like if I was a Dublin player, you'd be saying to yourself, Tyrone, I mentioned this last week, Tyrone had to make this an absolute battle. They had to make this parochial. They had to make this like the Battle of Omagh. They were on their knees after last week, you know, losing McShane, going out in the way they did, you know, in that game. Mickey Hart would have called for them to have a massive response, and I don't think it would have really mattered who the team was. It just happened to be Dublin, so that probably gave them an added extra bit of spice to kind of get them up there to a certain degree and really kind of get stuck into them. And they did that, you know, they did that for large swathes of the game, and ultimately they won the match. So like, I mean, you know, I saw a fella saying last week that Mickey Hart's lost it, he's lost the panel, he's done this, and then of course this week he'd be a hero again. Are they somewhere in between? I think they are. I think they're still struggling. But what it was really interesting to me, you know, I think we mentioned it last week about Petey Hart being dogged so much by opposition teams. Really interesting to see him being played in the full forward line. And he's really good in there. You know, he's electrically quick. He makes intelligent runs. If you see for the goal, he makes a run out. He creates space in behind. He's well able to kick his own score actually off left or right too. So, you know, the McShane thing may actually end up being a good thing for them in the sense that they actually find a spot for Petey Hart, that he's not taken out of games and he's trying to get box to box and he's being just dogged by a player. He can rather stay in the full forward line and actually cause a bit of havoc.
Is it unfair on Tyrone to suggest that the weather was a huge benefit to them at the weekend? That like I think nobody's surprised that Dublin go up there and get beaten, come back down the road after a humbling enough evening. Because I think if you translated this to, say, a Super 8s game in the summertime, which in fairness we saw last year, or a knockout game in the semi-final or an All-Ireland final, you give Dublin a healthy advantage 10 times out of 10. Like, is it just the fact that when the conditions are bad, when they have this kind of boisterous home support, they do just have an upper hand this time of the year, or is there a real championship thing we can look into?
No, it's a leveller. There's no doubt about it. It's a leveller. I don't think it wasn't a situation that Dublin weren't up for it. You know, I think Dublin were up for it, and certainly after half time, I think they were massively up for it. But I think, you know, I think Tyrone did a number on them in the sense of there was a number of players on the Dublin team who this would have been their first experience of this. A number of the younger guys and even some of the kind of older guys, but they've never had this kind of intensity. Be it, yes, they may have played up there previously, but it might have been on a relatively decent day. This was a real dogfight, you know. This was a real, you know, you just have to roll up the sleeves. And to be fair, I think a lot of Dublin players did that. I watched the game. I was watching kind of runs after it. There wasn't any sense that Dublin fellas threw up the flag or weren't working hard enough. They were trying to get back. They were tackling. They were doing everything they could. They were trying to break up the pitch, but. I think just ultimately they got a bit bogged down in it. Yeah, so there was a bit of a lever. I think they found it very difficult to get anything going up front. Pascal started really well, but then kind of petered out of the game. They brought McMenamin on, who tried to do a few things. They're just. I think again. It's a great spot for Dessie Farrell to be in, because he'll learn an awful lot from that game. He'll watch video of that game, I'd say, more than a lot of games. He'll really, really concentrate on, well, who actually really dug in for me? Who really, put the shoulder to the wheel? Like McCarthy was going around and he was really getting stuck in. He said, well, listen, you're not going to bully me. And they tried. Tyrone tried to bully, and McCarthy stood up. A number of them did. They were probably without some of their more enforcing players, Dublin. So it was a big test for them, and it was a big test, and it's something that Dessie Farrell won't mind. I don't think he'll be too disappointed necessarily that they got bet, because again it just kind of resets the wheel a little bit, and they go, okay, we won't let that happen again. We can understand what happened, because as you say, in Croke Park on a nice evening. Who's favourites for that? They're favourites all day long. You bring them up there on a wet, horrible, dirty night on a Saturday evening, it starts to level it out a bit.
For sure. I definitely think that when it comes to the dog element of the game, Dublin have been so good at that sometimes it is unusual when you see them actually come up second best after a game that involved so much needle. That the Dublin are actually kings of this, not Tyrone, really. So I wonder if that's a little bit of a concern from it all, that actually it isn't just one of those nights. I know, granted, you look at that Teen Rock effort that was going over the bar and then actually ended up going out for a sideline. It was horrific conditions, and you don't want to be harsh on the forward line. But I'm basically, if you told me that if there was a brawl at half-time, I would have said Dublin are going to win this game, and I think that is often the case, but just not on Saturday.
Yeah, but I think it's suited as well. It's kind of a la like the Donegal-Monaghan game to a certain degree. So the conditions can really help a team who know how to play a certain system in those types of conditions. So if you're playing a very ultra-defensive system, that you're all sitting back and you're willing to break and counter-attack, that can really work well for you, especially if you've got a number of players like they did of PD Hart being an outlet, right? So Tyrone didn't all collapse in. They had a couple of fellas up front that they were able to get outlet balls to, and they were able to move up the pitch. But on an evening like that, they can frustrate Dublin, they can get them in, they turned Dublin over an awful lot, fellas running in, getting tackles, and then there was a few hits after it, and the crowd got behind them. So it all fed into the game plan, really. If you have a situation, obviously, where the ball is moving faster, it's a nice day, there's no wind, there's none of those factors in, well, then all of a sudden, Dublin get a couple of scores ahead, Tyrone have to come out a bit, and then, as I say, it dictates their game plan an awful lot. So really, Mickey Hart was probably licking his lips going, this is beautiful. I know when we have the breeze, we can still stay relatively tight but counter-attack a bit quicker. And when we're against the breeze, we'll just play our natural game, and we'll just suck Dublin in and just try and hit them on the counter. So he would have been very happy. But Farrell, as I say, Farrell won't be, I don't think, there was a good few guys, as I say, who wouldn't have been used to that kind of level. And it is a different level. When you're in Croke Park and you've got the open spaces of Croke Park and you've got the stand and you've got, in the league, and you've got whatever amount of couple of thousand people, or 10 or 20, 30,000 people in, and there is that kind of weird sound, and you can hear people shouting and all that stuff, in the league. It is massively different than going up to a tight pitch in Tyrone on a wet Saturday night, and the crowd are literally 10 yards from you, baying for blood. So it is a different feeling, and some of these players will never have experienced that before, but now they can tick the box, and Dessie Farrell can sit down and say, right, you will probably not get as intimidating an atmosphere ever again, and you certainly won't get it in Croke Park. So, yes, we failed, we didn't get the 2 points, but ultimately they did stand up.
In terms of a couple of the Dublin forwards here, Colin Pascal and Sean Bugler in particular, as you say, they've gained an awful lot from a sort of dogfight like Saturday night was. Are these two guys definitely the two to come into this forward line this year that we'll see more substitute appearances, or could one of them perhaps even make it into the starting 15?
Yeah, like Pascal took his goal brilliantly. You know, the run before it was really good. I think Fitzsimons did absolutely brilliant. I think it was Fitzsimons who managed to flick the ball out to him. You know, it looked like he was going to get overturned, and then did a brilliant pass into his path. Bugler is really good. You know, he started at 11, and he shipped a lot of close attention, shall we say, from Tyrone. You know, he's a big lad. He was on Brennan though, and Brennan is a really, really good footballer. Like, I mean, he's well able to get forward. You saw it himself with his goal, but even before that, he drives forward. He puts you on the back foot. And we've spoken this, you know, in the past about this central column, be it in Donegal or Monaghan or Galway or Tyrone. And he is a six that likes to go. He is a six that needs protection because he gets up the field, he creates stuff, he gets on the end of things. So he would have put Bugler under a bit of pressure. You know, he would have spent a lot of time going back that way when he would rather be at 11 and trying to dictate. Will they manage to break their way in? You know, I'd say Dessie Farrell, as I said, you watch the video. If you watch McMenamin for the goal, you know, he loses Brennan. He kind of has him at one stage, and then he kind of goes, he's not going to get it, and he gets a bit lazy, and then the pass comes to him, and you see him then chasing. That's something that will be just highlighted in the video and just shown to Kevin McMenamin saying, can't do this. Yeah. You know, you can't do this again. And it's a real, you could see him after it. He knew he took the attention off for a second. That's the kind of stuff that Dessie Farrell will absolutely demand from anyone. Like, I mean, Mannion was putting in a shift. Bugler was putting in a shift. Pascal spent a lot of time. You know, when you're playing against Tyrone in that sense, it's very, very, very frustrating because you're getting the ball, you have to shift it out. You're now on a bog of a pitch. It's very hard to get your feet under you. You know, two fellas converge on you. You can't bounce the ball, so you're relying on your actual ability to move your feet. You've only got the 4 steps. You have to take a quick solo. All the defender has to do is stay close to you and then get a hand in or just pull you back a little bit. So it's very difficult. You need the bounce to be able to get out of that press. And when you don't have it on a bog of a pitch, it's very, very tough. So it requires real quick hands and runners to be coming at pace, which you saw obviously for the first goal. But no, they'll look. They're good players. They're good players. But you know, I think what's more interesting for Dessie Farrell is that, you know, can he now, as I say, analyse that game and say, right, fellas, this is a situation where it was extremely hostile. We all know what happened at half time. We came back out, we put the shoulders to the wheel, but ultimately we lost the game. But what did we learn from it?
What's the biggest brawl you've ever been in?
Inter-county or club?
Either or. I'll take anything this morning.
I was involved in a club brawl when I was only 8. No, actually I was 19 or 20. I just came out of minor, and I was playing corner forward for my club at the time. And yeah, that was a tasty one.
What happened?
There was an altercation with the goalkeeper and our full forward, and unfortunately for the goalkeeper, our full forward was a Leinster champion boxing dude, and it didn't end well for the goalkeeper. He ended up going through the net and taking the net down, and then the brawl kind of ensued after that, and everyone was in. Sideline was in. I remember there was a man in with an umbrella. He had a pair of Mikasa gloves and a big umbrella, and he was just clocking balls on top of the head. Now, I was 18 and I was absolutely bricking it, but what happened, to be fair, my man was about the same age, so the two of us kind of looked at each other and went, nah, we're not doing that.
Two gentlemen.
Yeah, so we kind of had our own little tete-a-tete on the sideline. No, it happened in the middle of the field. It was absolute mayhem, but that was Division 5 league in me. That was a nice tasty wake-up call after coming out of minor. I think in inter-county we had a few ding-dongs with Dublin, obviously. We had two in Parnell Park. We'd one with Eamon Barry in the O'Byrne Cup, and then we had one under Coiler, where a few fellas got suspended. And it was one of those.
This is the one under Coiler, as you mentioned. So there's a piece here from April 21st, 2008.
Oh, yeah.
While having no complaints about the refereeing performance of Paddy Russell, Dublin manager Paul Caffrey was fuming with the unidentified Meath fan who threw a cup of hot tea at Kieran Whelan after he received his marching orders. I'm sure the spectator who threw that at Kieran Whelan is not the proudest man, or maybe he is, said Caffrey after the game. overshadowed by an early 29-man brawl which led to the dismissal of 4 players, with Whelan also seeing red after 15 minutes. Dublin and Meath have massive respect for each other, and long may that continue, but supporters throwing hot cups of tea at players doesn't enter into it. That's not a true reflection of the great Meath supporters. What goes on the field of play goes on. That was extra. You had a
bit of everyone in there. Brenny Murphy was in there, goalkeeper, good to see. There was Paddy Andrews wearing number 4.
Yeah, back in the day,
yeah. I was injured for that one. I think I had a groin operation for that one, but that was a real.
What did Kieran Whelan do to deserve having a hot cup of tea thrown at him?
I think it was more tepid really than hot.
Okay.
Yeah. Like I mean, the temperature of the tea, is the vibe.
It wasn't fresh from the flask.
No, it wasn't. No, absolutely not. No, it was. I think that was like Parnell Park is an interesting ground because it's like a club ground, but it's obviously you go into a relatively small clubhouse. You're in this dressing room. Dublin are literally across in the opposite dressing room, and you can hear nearly everything. You can hear fellas shouting, you can hear managers saying stuff, you can hear everything. And I can't remember if that was. I think it was. I don't know if that was early on, but we were well wound up for it. Coyler was well wound up for it, like obviously 2007 had gone pretty well for us. We got to the All-Ireland semi-final, so 08 we were trying to set some markers down, but the one I'll always remember, there was a good few suspensions. We got hit with a good few actually after that, as did Dublin. I can't remember if I think Darren Fay may have got sent off, or Niall McCaig definitely got sent off, and he got suspended for 2 or 3 months for that, which basically was your season over, so they really came down pretty hard on it after that, if I remember correctly. Again, it was a lot of pulling and dragging and everything else. You don't want to see it, but sometimes it happens.
Yeah, absolutely. We might actually kind of mix things up here a little bit and get back to the Division 1 games in just a moment. I just want to make time for Congress here.
Lovely.
Have you been to annual Congress?
Oh, yes, I have, yeah.
What's it like?
It is... I don't want to say and sound like I'm being completely dismissive of it. What is it like? It's long. Mm-hmm. It is extremely long.
Well, it sounds like it was pretty brief around certain arguments.
Well, around certain arguments it is. I tell you, it's an interesting thing. It's because there's obviously I wasn't aware of this, but there's a certain kind of format to Congress. So let's say we need to get something through. There's a certain time and there's a certain place on the list that needs to go.
Okay.
So you either do it very early when you have the support and it just gets bang, 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 seconded, boom, you get it through real quick, or you stick it in nice and late when there's no one around. So most of the guys, that was myself and Micheál Bryody. We were in the CPA. The CPA, we went there obviously a couple of years ago during the whole transparency motion. We tried to get this motion through where basically you would see who voted. Like your delegate is obviously sent to vote a certain way. You would obviously consult it at the county meeting. You'd say, okay, which way are we going to vote? We're going to mandate. You're mandated to vote this way. Fine, you go down. But actually, you could just change your mind, as you walk through the door or as someone talks to you. And on a whim. Now listen, people are allowed to change their mind, that's no problem, but there should be a record of, well, did you change your mind? And if you did change your mind, would you mind coming back to your county who have just mandated you to vote a certain way and explain yourself if you don't mind? So that of course is not there, so you don't know who votes what way. It's absolutely ridiculous. I think it's probably one of the only kind of democratic voting system where there isn't any transparency. It's absolutely ludicrous. So stuff goes on, as you can imagine. There's a little bit of, leaning on, shall we say. Mm-hmm. There's a fair amount of you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back going on. And as I say, there's a certain format, there's a certain kind of way. There's nearly like a dance that happens in the sense of where do we put this on the floor? If we put it in at the end, everyone will be out there to be in having pints or to be gone home or to be across the road in the Crow Park Hotel eating their dinner or whatever it is. Like, so there's a lot of kind of, it's an old boys club to be fair, with a sprinkling of female representatives in there and a couple of younger people. But pretty much everyone knows everyone, and all the way decided, there's decisions made prior to it, so everyone knows which way the votes are going to go.
I find it extraordinary that a fairly significant rule is going to come into play this summer on the back of Friday's Congress that motion 6, I think it was, that the back pass will now become a rule and it will be forbidden if you're the goalkeeper and you kick it out to a defender. He can't pass it immediately back to you. That we have been trying out new rules in recent years. That I just find it extraordinary that there is a significant rule that exists separate to the Standing Rules Committee, who need to work tooth and nail to actually get them some league trial time, and then it gets ditched for the championship, whereas this is just brought in and straight into the championship this year.
Well, it's amazing, really, because it's quite a significant rule. It is quite a significant. Now, the powers that be will say, well, we should have known it was there. Like, I mean, I think there is notification that's put out now. If you actually have time to sit down and read through it and actually see what exactly is on the clause, but it was obviously out there. It is quite amazing that it just gets through that quickly. And again, it's another alteration to an already altered game. Like, I mean, Gaelic football has been altered so much in the last 12 months. It's unbelievable. It's between the mark, between different stuff. Now they're just throwing another thing in there, and it is, as you say, it just gets kind of kicked on, passed through, and a lot of times, as I say, these things get, if you can get the president and say the Uachtaráin, if you can get the director general, and if you can get a lot of the top table either bringing a motion forward or proposing
it will pass.
It's done. It absolutely sails through. And it can be as controversial as you like, but it will sail through.
It's interesting. So when we look at that, and of course the big talking point of Congress is actually a hurling talking point around the black card. Trashed, 82% against it, not getting in. It's interesting, John Horan was talking about that, and he says, personally, I wouldn't be satisfied with the way it was pushed back by high-profile characters coming out, and whereas they've never fully denied that cynicism is there in hurling, and we know that, see some of the tackles, but yeah, they railed against it. Unfortunately, we can only chair the meeting. I would concur with those concerns. So you compare the national talk about black card and apparently the fact that hurling was given UNESCO heritage status a couple of years ago was mentioned multiple times in arguments on Friday night. The fact that this was like a big public thing was always going to be a contributing factor to this getting hammered and not passing, whereas, as we mentioned with Tommy earlier on, for people just joining us, 9:34, according to Malachy Clerkin's piece here on Friday night, the motion was proposed for the back pass. At 9:36 it was passed. So you're talking about weeks and weeks and weeks of widespread debate, and that's obviously not the GAA's fault or anything, of widespread debate, hurling, men standing up for hurling over the last few weeks, and here we go, 2 minutes to a rule change in how the game is literally going to be played. And it's the headline on Malachy's piece is, again, Congress shows that no one sticks up for football. Is that true?
Well, you would certainly think about it, if you thought about all of the different changes that have happened to Gaelic football over the last, as I say, 12, 24, months, you would have to think there is no one really kind of saying, like, the hurling thing really amazed me, because there were a lot of high profile hurling people coming out and saying no, but they're giving their opinion. But that should not affect the opinion then of the top table and the people who are ultimately the clubs and everyone else who's actually going to say, no, we need to vote for this or we don't need to vote for this. And that's fine, but no one had a chance to talk about this one. I don't know. Maybe it just got lost in the ether with all of the talk about the black card, but very, very few.
This is a Trojan horse.
Exactly. And by the way, there's nearly always a Trojan horse every year at Congress. There's nearly always something that's slipped in. As I said, there's a place you put these things, where you're going to get minimal or maximum kind of coverage. And if you want minimum coverage, minimum fuss, you stick it in late on a Friday evening when everyone's going home. Everyone has already been there since probably 5 or 6 o'clock. They're tired. They're after listening to 3.5, 4 hours of this stuff. They're saying to themselves, I'm out of here. I have to come here again tomorrow morning. A lot of them used to stay over, so you can imagine things are kind of woolly on a Saturday morning after the big breakfast. So if you want to get her in on a Saturday morning, that's a good time to do it as well. So it's either Friday evening, Saturday morning. Don't do it at 6:30, 7 o'clock on a Friday evening. That's where the real stuff is debated. People are all full of energy and ready to go. So look, I'm amazed. I tell you, I've done one and I'll never do it again. It was 3 hours of my life I'll never get back.
I feel like we should actually send you on behalf of Off the Ball next year for like a running commentary. Just on a practical level then, like we've started to see the sweeper keeper become more of a thing recently, or the roving keeper. Does this now diminish this summer, that Rory Beggan won't be kind of popping out to the wing to receive the pass back because he literally can't get it anymore? Or is it actually just one little facet, he can still come out once it's the second pass back?
Yeah, I think it's one little facet. I think what you'd have to do is you just make a way around it. So what you do is I kick to you, you have to have a player close to you. In other words, someone to come and take the ball off you, say a hand pass, so someone comes looping around your shoulder, you hand pass, and then he kicks back to the goalkeeper and away you go. You know, it's just an added pass. That's really all it is. You know, it's like, I mean, I like the fact that goalkeepers are coming into the game more.
Well, it's been innovation. Like, I think we should be applauding innovation.
Absolutely. Like, I mean, it's funny, I saw Shane Kern tweeting over the weekend. Like, Shane used to come out of goal all the time. Like, I mean, he was out.
Well, he wouldn't need a pass back. He would just solo.
Oh, no, he just solo. He was like, he'd actually give you the ball and roar. He'd give it to you in trouble nearly. So you're about to get absolutely killed. So you'd have to give it back to him. And then he'd take off. And of course, he'd be abusing lads and he'd be talking to them on the way back. I remember we played them in a challenge match. I was like, this lad is absolutely crazy. Yeah. Because he was just coming out. He was standing around the 45. Now, obviously, you see the downside of it with the Donegal Monaghan game at the weekend, where Beggan got caught with an unbelievable kick out by Pat.
What a kick out against the wind as well.
Oh, it's phenomenal. I know the wind died down at halftime, but it didn't turn, you know. Yeah. But like, he literally kicked it like he had the breeze behind him. He's not a big guy, you know. You compare him to Durkin, who was there a couple of years back. And even last year, now he's put on a bit of bulk and his legs have looked like he got a bit stronger, but he's not a fella who you'd look at and go, he can kick the ball 70 yards.
Yeah, like Beggan is a beast, and you can...
Absolutely. Yeah, and Morgan is a big enough guy, whereas Patton, you know, even last year, now as I say, he's built up a bit, but he has a strike that is just so sweet. And it was brilliant, because if you watch it, it's hard to really see in the TV, but he's looking out to his left as if he's going to go short, and then he kind of looks to his right, and then at the last second he just runs and bang straight down the middle. And it was really, really well done. I was very impressed with Donegal. I thought McBurty was phenomenal. He's back, and he's back stronger, and he's back quicker. You know, a lot of guys come back from those injuries and they lose a yard. There was a great little cameo where he just ducked inside one of the Monaghan defenders and just took off. Monaghan are, you know, I remember someone talking about one-trick ponies. Monaghan are a very one-trick team. They showed it against Dublin. They have this all-out counter-attack, and we spoke about it, where the cornerbacks, the full-back, everyone goes to try to go beyond the kind of blanket, get in behind you, but it is a very, very high-energy, high-octane game, and when you're up in Donegal on a bog of a pitch, coming against a blanket that is Donegal,
it's tough.
And you've only got McManus up front, it is wickedly tough. McGee giving McManus plenty of it, you know, just in his ear, hitting him every time the ball came near him, defending him really well from out in front. They really struggled, Monaghan, and it was no surprise that once Donegal got the goal and kind of started to seek ahead, then of course, you know, the cards happened, and that was Monaghan's goose cooked. But it's a worry for Monaghan in the sense of, I still don't see a lot of talk about McCarthy coming into this game. He was really played out of it, you know, he got a lot of attention. I think he got one score, but the whole forward line, you're again looking, going, who's going to really get the scores for them if they come up against a similar type of system again? If you play running game against them and have it very open, yeah, they're going to get plenty of scores. But I think if you just retreat and go, okay, try and run through us, we're going to do what you want to do to us, to you. Yeah. And Donegal are the masters at that.
And then a final point, Mayo looking in big trouble at this point.
Yeah, like, I mean, you know, I spoke to you about the Meath-Kerry game, and I expected Mayo to go up and beat the spread on this, because I thought there would be a kick in them. And at half-time I just went, oh, well, I got that completely wrong. And I was amazed to see by the end what they did. Now watching it back, like, I mean, they just were absolutely terrible the first half.
Horrific.
Like, I mean, their lack of being on it. There was Kerry fellas just, you know, it was a hand going in, guy gone, then Mayo lads were just standing up. There was no retreating, there was no chasing back, there was no sense of urgency at all, which is a worry, because you would imagine Horan, like, the one thing you can't say about Meath is that they're not having a sense of urgency. Like, they ran themselves ragged, yesterday. They fought and fought and fought, and they have been fighting the last few games, and the players are all putting their shoulder to the wheel. But Mayo were like, I mean, if I was a Mayo fan at that halftime, I'd say these guys aren't playing for Horan. They're just not playing. There's nothing going on here. Now, second half, you kind of go, okay, yeah, they put a shift in. Like Aidan O'Shea put a massive shift in, and all of them did. They got it together, and they actually came back at Kerry. Now, Kerry probably really set their own because they just sat back and they kind of invited Mayo on a bit. But Kerry there's a few little worries going on there in Kerry, I'd say too. You know, they haven't been shooting the lights out at all. And then, you know, Cork, unbeknownst to anyone, are just rattling through that division. Now, you would expect them to rattle through the division, but they're dismissing teams very, very easily, you know, and playing decent football. And I'm not saying
it's a Munster semi-final as well this year. You get Kerry earlier on, so
they'll come in under the radar. Cork will come in under the radar, you know.
Listen, Anthony Moyles, thanks a million for popping in this morning. More Congress chat next time you're in, hopefully. We are talking Liverpool's unbeaten Premier League run coming to an end next, because on OTB AM we've got James Pearce of The Athletic standing by. Back after these.